I left Adobe years ago, and more people should probably do the same, and not for the reasons you've probably heard before. Sit back as I break apart one of the most exploitive companies of our generation and give you genuine points of action to make a difference that go beyond just switching software. After a quick message from our sponsor. Whether you're someone who has a daily journal, or you're a project manager, or you just want a place to keep your notes or be more productive, you probably have never thought about the privacy and security of where you keep that information. But fortunately, that's something that Notesnook specializes in, who's the sponsor of our video. Notesnook does a great job of balancing both convenience with productivity, with features, and also doing it in a way that's end-to-end encrypted so that you can ensure that you're the only person who can access your data, or select people that you want to share bits of. I really appreciate how they've taken those mainstream features that many people are used to, but packaged it in a way that really prioritizes my safety as well as anyone else who's using Notesnook. The cherry on top is that they have a really solid free offering, so there's really no risk in giving it a shot. It's open source, it's free to try, and they have a great suite of tools that really prioritizes safety. So thank you Notesnook for sponsoring our content, and now back to the video. Now, I didn't leave the womb hating Adobe. I started my creative world with Adobe Photoshop in the classroom and Sony Vegas Pro at home for video editing, and slowly worked into the Adobe suite as time went on until I was one of likely many of you who pay for Adobe's monthly suite. Like many who make videos like this, the constant bugs and worsening user experience that accompanied a hefty monthly fee made me lose my patience. But this only really scratches the surface. You see, if you're a monthly subscriber, Adobe charges you a hefty premium to not just stay in the service, but actually leave the service. You don't just cancel your subscription like you do like Netflix. This has been called illegal by the FTC, who's currently coming after Adobe.
If you pirated Adobe Creative Suite 4, you can still use it today. If you paid full sticker price for Adobe Creative Suite 4 and your machine dies and you reinstall the OS, and you need to reinstall the program, you can take that program that you paid full price for and it won't work.
It's a clear move by Adobe to force users into the modern subscription ecosystem. If you still don't believe me, get this. Adobe implements some of the most extreme dark patterns to rope people into their subscription by directly lying to them about what they're signing up for. Deceptive Patterns on Twitter made this thread about how when users start this 7-day free trial, they're actually entering a hidden forced commitment into an annual subscription which isn't stated anywhere outside of this tiny little fine print, with the only way to cancel this annual subscription, well, monthly subscription that's an annual commitment, is to pay a cancellation fee based on how much money you still have left to give them for the remainder of your subscription. This also includes students who are roped into their weird student plans that get more expensive as time goes on. For those of you who are better with numbers, if you click yes to this screen for a 7-day free trial, you have to give Adobe $600 for the next 12 months. And the worst part is it doesn't really end there. If you pay off those 12 months, you're not free because there's actually no way to disable auto renewal. Yeah, to this day, Adobe does not let you disable an auto renewal on your active subscription. The only way is to cancel your account. And you might be saying, Henry, look, I get it. They make it hard to leave the service, it's expensive, but I love Adobe, it works for me, I'm a professional, and I love the tools and I don't mind paying the money. Well, there's still some issues. See, if you're in the Adobe ecosystem, Adobe recently tried to roll out AI training using your art, and it wasn't until public outcry that they stopped the initiative. Not too long ago, another TOS update now allows Adobe to view access to all of your projects, which some believe means they might use that to someday train AI. And not even Adobe employees themselves are able to justify Adobe's behavior anymore. I quote, "The general perception is Adobe is an evil company that will do whatever it takes to F its users." Adobe Flash was always a security nightmare. Many people forgot about when Adobe spied on its customers by including spyware in CS3, where it quietly sent data to Omniture. There was another incident where Photoshop CS5 had a security issue that Adobe actually tried to paywall to force an upgrade from their users before they'd fix the security issue. But fortunately, people got pissed and there was backlash, and they did provide a patch for free. Crazy. In the past, they actually included third-party browser toolbars and free virus scanners as part of its own Flash update process to improve the security of Flash that was designed to scare users into paying for unneeded system repairs. I don't miss those days. In 2013, they leaked almost 3 million customers' personal data, which included their credit card information. And the worst part is that 3 million figure is what they initially reported, but was subtly fixed later to be 38 million users impacted. And it also included not just credit card info, but user IDs and encrypted passwords as part of this leak. So no, all of the stuff that I'm talking about with Adobe aren't new incidents. When you use Adobe software, you're installing software with a ton of background processes and unnecessary data collection with a company that has a history of not caring about your work and who has access to it. I understand and sympathize because it's hard to move away. At the end of the day, most companies and schools still by default choose Adobe, and if you're in a professional world, you likely have to use Adobe. But most people don't ever ask why. So Freehand was an insightful story that was a big learning experience for me. Freehand was a direct competitor to Adobe Illustrator. Adobe tried directly acquiring them way back in the day, but the FTC intervened and forced Adobe to not buy any similar programs. They pretty much set a 10-year window where they couldn't buy it, and then after the 10 years passed, they bought it anyway and slowly halted its development, rendering it obsolete, meaning Adobe now controlled the only 2 vector graphics editors, and they were equivalents back in the day. As of 2010, on the Freehand product page, Adobe, which they own now, stated, "While we recognize Freehand has a loyal customer base, we encourage users to migrate to the new Adobe Illustrator CS4. Adobe just tried a similar game plan last year with Figma, where again, the government prevented this acquisition, but it's probably only a matter of time before Adobe finds a way to stifle any competitors that could ever realistically compete against it. What I really want to drill home here is that the planets didn't just align for Adobe to be the go-to option for all you creatives out there, for schools, for the workforce, and there's no real alternatives. That wasn't an accident. It happened after decades of market manipulation, stifling competition, exploitive user practices, and a lot more scummy behavior to ensure no one else can exist. It's not a coincidence. It's very much a purposeful thing. And as bad as this might seem for Adobe, they're actually not alone. Facebook, Google, Apple, Microsoft, and most big tech companies have mastered the art of exploiting other companies, open source projects, and their own users. Adobe is just part of a much bigger problem that we as users have to be aware of and fight against. First, vote with your wallet. It's one of the most powerful things you can do. When you choose to pay for Adobe, you're paying to support its practices and ethics. I'm not typically an all or nothing kind of person, so if this means you find a way to give them less money, that's still progress in a positive direction. Not just for Adobe either, but any of these big tech companies. Less money equals less support. Second, invest money to supporting better stuff. People rave about DaVinci Resolve, as do I, and they offer an awesome free plan, but I bought the paid studio version actually 2 times. I didn't like the USB thing, so I got the digital one too. So I bought it twice, but at least it helps support a company that can help compete against Adobe. For those of you who prefer open source options, they all most certainly are going to offer ways for you to donate. Every dollar helps initiatives grow and develop, and even if you don't use the open source alternatives, you should still try to find one to fund, because your money can help ensure they're maybe one day good enough to replace your current tools, assuming they don't already. You should give them a shot. Some people like to do a price match, which I think is really clever. So if you're giving Adobe $1, you also have to give an open source competitor $1 too, as this is a win-win for everyone and ensures Adobe has some competition. Speaking of this, 3, actually use and consider the alternatives. I'm not going to be one to say that GIMP is the world's best Photoshop replacement. I've tried more times than I can count and I couldn't use it, but if it weren't for my experimenting, I wouldn't have found or tried Photopea, which I loved, or the Affinity Suite, which both pleasantly surprised me. A lot of people are hesitant to try these alternatives, and I get it, change is really hard, but the reality is that a lot more people out there can get just as much value out of software that is designed from the ground up to respect them. And it might actually do everything you need it to. It's a win-win. Fourth, vote for politicians and call representatives to let them know that you support their initiatives when they hold companies like this accountable. Apple's getting hammered globally right now. Adobe, Microsoft, and the list goes on. Let your reps know that you support these efforts and vote for people who believe in this kind of stuff. And fifth and finally, use your voice to share these issues with the people around you. You just watched an entire video on Adobe's problems, their history, and all this other stuff, but in my classes when I mentioned even one of these problems with Adobe, most of my peers had never heard of them. Most artists are busy making art, that's their job, but it's also their job to make sure they're using tools that will continue allowing them to perfect their craft. If you don't feel comfortable doing it yourself, then just share with them this video or another resource that you can point them towards. I hope this video was insightful. If you enjoyed this kind of content, join us on Patreon at patreon.com/Techlore. It's how we're able to keep a lot of this content for free for all of you. And I also want to shout out our new gold patron, Richard, who is awesome for being a gold patron. They're now listed on our website, and we couldn't do it with people like them. I also want to thank our sponsor, Notesnook, for sponsoring our content and being a major part of why we can put out this content. And I want to thank you all for watching. I'll see you next time on Techlore. Support us down below, and we'll see you next time.